Hey everyone, welcome into a brand new show here on the DR Sports Media Network, the platform under the light show. We're going to be here every week with you guys talking about what we see on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights in high school and youth football. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ben Spicer. Joining me is Drew Johnson, holding it down in Central Florida and the surrounding area in the Sunshine State. Then we go all the way out to Texas with our guy Marc Henry in the DFW area. He also goes down to Houston sometimes as well. Things kicking off there in Texas next week. We've already got a week under our belt, Drew. I've got 2 weeks under mine. I went up to South Georgia 2 weeks ago and saw some football. But it's the best time of year, guys. Football is back. College football is back. NFL will be here soon. But we all love our high school football a little bit. Drew, how you feeling, man? Good to see you. And what are you looking forward to here?
I'm excited. You see, I'm ready to jump on it, baby. I'm glad we got this show going. You know, I feel like we really boots on the ground. That's what we're about. So I think a high school show, an under the lights type thing is something we needed to provide on the platform.
Mark, how's things going out there in Texas?
Well, man, everything's gravy. We're about to get started this week 0 here in Texas. It's about to get muddy, man. You got to get your rain boots on, man. It's about to get live at 5, man. I can't wait. Chomping at the bits. And, man, let's get to it, man. Appreciate y'all for having me on. I can't wait to do this on a weekly basis under the lights, man. Let's get it.
So we mentioned the show is powered by DR Sports. Of course, that's the parent company. But one thing that's really taken off, and you see we've all got the shirts on DR7 or the platform, but the platform itself, this is our second year of Friday night coverage, and we're expanding. We've done some more coverage compared to last year. I know I've been able to help you guys out a little bit more this year, so excited about that. But for people who might not be familiar, kind of break down what the platform is. Mark, we'll start with you. Kind of explain, what they can see on the platform and just what we're trying to do in general.
Well, the main mission and goal of the platform is to expose the unexposed. We want to deliver coverage around the country on youth athletes, players around the country, coaches around the country that don't get the exposure that they may need. Of course, we're going to see the 4- and 5-star guys, but I always look for that guy that's the hidden gem, that baller that can play that just may not be in that area that gets a lot of exposure. A lot of times, Texas is a grand state. There's kids out in West Texas that people don't know about. There's kids out in deep East Texas that you don't know about. Here in Texas, DFW and Houston kind of run everything when it goes to the headlines. But there's some guys in San Antonio and Central Texas that need to get that coverage. And that's what we're all about here at the platform as a, national brand is we want to cover everybody and get you that exposure that you need.
Drew, kind of, you've been with us for several years now, and you've kind of been, the spark plug, the thing that's kind of gotten us going with the platform, especially in Florida. So kind of take us through what the platform has meant to you and what you're kind of trying to do through the platform.
Well spoken, Mark. I think you hit a lot of points. And the platform, going on year 2, I think we've done a great job, just smashing players throughout that 7v7 period. But I really think the platform could be like the next go-to source. I think we are the next go-to source when it comes to high school football news and recruiting. Our goal is, just to keep a consistent and updated website for our eventual subscribers can read, stay tapped into weekly, putting out weekly news for you guys to stay tapped into. And I think what separates us, guys, and we talk about it a lot, is the funnel we get, right? We get to see these kids in youth stages when it comes to DR7. So I think that separates us when it comes to getting eyes on prospects early. And the mission, guys, the mission and the goal. The mission of the goal of the platform is to expose the unexposed, like Mark said, and to provide adequate coverage of athletes participating in DR7 tournaments and around the country. I think that mission statement is point on to what we're trying to do and provide to our readers and our eventual subscribers.
So you guys said it there. We'll be talking about games that we see on the past Friday, and then also previewing upcoming games that we're going to. That's what we're going to do here on the first show. Of course, we're going to have guests in the future and interviews and all that. But for the first show, we thought that we'd show you all our smiling faces and kind of give you some insight into who we are. So, like I said, I've been to games the past 2 weeks. Went up to South Georgia last week. This past Friday, I was in Tallahassee. I got to see Rickards and Godby. So I'll kind of break that down real quick, and then we'll let Drew talk about what he saw. And I want to let Mark kind of break down his teams to watch in the DFW, which is not easy to do. There's so many teams out there, but I know Mark's got some insight to some teams to look out for. But I want to start with Rickards. They come out on top 22-21. I was kind of texting you guys, and I'm like, man, it's off to a slow start. It's not looking good. It's 3-0 at halftime. Kind of bored here, guys. But things picked up when they came back out of the locker room. Carly's Price, man, 16 carries for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, I know when you hear that, it's like, that's not anything crazy. But most of that yardage came in the second half. The 2 touchdowns came in the second half as well. 2026 running back for the Raiders. I think he's going to have a breakout season. He's tough to tackle, man. He's a human joystick. There were several times in that game where it looked like Godby had him surrounded, 2 or 3 hats on the ball, and Price found a way to get loose. He's elusive. He's shifty. And he's a presence on special teams, too. Had a big return on a kick return. So I think Rickards is really going to lean on him. I think they're going to run the football, especially since their quarterback, Ben Henry, can run the ball as well. So look out for Carly's Price. If I was buying stock and a kid in the North Florida, Tallahassee area, I think Carly's is going to have a huge season. Of course, when you think of Rickards, you think of Jalen Wiggins, defensive lineman, Florida commit. He finished with 6 tackles on the game. I was most impressed with one play in particular, though. So Godby quarterback Lazarus Chambers takes off. He scrambles, and he's by no means slow. So his Twitter page says he runs a 4.5. You guys know how that goes. It might be 4.6, 4.7. But anyways, he's fast. He's not slow. So he's running down the far sideline from my viewpoint. And he does slow down just a little bit to avoid a defender. But before he could fully get going again, Wiggins comes out of nowhere from behind him and puts a big pop on him, man. So I'm like, that was the one play where I'm like, okay, I see the hype. I see what the buzz is about. So obviously Wiggins is a freak athlete. He played tight ends for Rickards as well. I think he's got 5-star potential, guys, maybe when it's all said and done and they do the rankings over again. But without a doubt, one of the best defensive linemen in Florida in the country. If the Gators hold on to him, they're getting a gem. I think Coach Napier might want to see if he could suit up next Saturday for them already. They might need him. A couple more guys I want to mention here. Can't go without mentioning Roy Andrews, 2026 defensive back, blocked 2 kicks in the game. The second one coming with 2:38 to play, and Godby going for the tying point after. Andrews came through unblocked, got his hand on the ball before it ascended, and was huge in his team getting the dub. I like special teams, guys. I'm going to try and mention some special teams every week if I can, because it's important. It's an important phase of the game. Don't get me started. Don't let me rant about special teams. Let's look at Cougars now. Let's look at Godby. We talked about Chambers. I was impressed with him. I think it's a big recruiting year for the 2026 dual-threat quarterback. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, the second one to pull his team to within that point in the fourth quarter before they had it blocked. Didn't see anyone open downfield. He improvised a little bit, lowered his shoulder to fight in for the score. Of course, facing Rickards, he faced a ton of pressure throughout with that stacked Raiders defensive line, but really got the passing game going in the second half, especially downfield. He's got 2 really talented receivers out wide that are going to help him have a big season in Tylen Vickers and Jamarin Simmons. Vickers is 2026 as well. He's got several Power 4 offers, including Miami, Florida State, and my Louisville Cardinals. They love that Florida talent. Simmons also picked up an FSU offer this summer, too, so look out for both of these guys. They can stretch the field and also rack up the yards after catch. Drew, I know you're tapped in with Florida, man. Big win for Polk County. They went down to South Florida. Lakeland came out on top. What can you tell us about that game?
Yeah, boy, hell of a talking. Good job for you to start us off, man. For sure, you got us lit. But no, it wouldn't be Florida football, man. You from Florida, you already know what it is. It wouldn't be Florida football without rain, right? So the rain washed out a lot of the Orlando games. Some of the Polk games got thrown off a little bit. But you already know, Ben, I had to catch Lakeland versus Miami Central, right? Any way I could. I had a couple guests on the rundown to talk about it, to kind of preview the show a little bit, get people hyped up. If you're from the Polk area, you already know this was the game of the year for us, right? It was time for us to tap some of that Miami ass. So, hey, we owed them one, like my boy Polk said. We owed them one. But no, let's talk about the game a little bit. You know what I mean? Lakeland, of course, went down to the Mecca, Trash Power Stadium, as they know down there in the South Florida. And they was able to pull out a win. It was a tough game. It was a physical game. You guys know it comes down to the trenches at the prep level, man. And I feel like Lakeland did a great job controlling the line of scrimmage. They even had a goal line stop, man. It's hard to get a goal line stop with them huge Miami kids. It limited turnovers. And the big play of the game, Ben, you mentioned it, was special teams, man. Lakeland was able to cause a turnover on a punt that kind of swung the momentum and kind of gave them an extra possession. So that was the game of the week for us, man. Lakeland was able to pull off that game against Miami Central. Like I said, if you're from Polk, that was big time, bro. We owed them one. The week before, my Armwood was able to go down and get one. So that's just a great way to start the season, right? And we'll talk about next week where I'm going to be next week because I'm on Lakeland's trail again. I got to be because they got a big-time game coming up. But that was the game I caught this week, Ben. A kid I want to shout out for that game is a kid I talked about on my show, man. It's Shenard Clower. You know, a lot of kids don't have to be the biggest, right? It don't matter if you're 6'5" or whatever. This kid's not the biggest, but he's got the biggest heart. And he's a playmaker. He's a kid that can change the game. Had a couple big-time receiving plays, and he's a guy that can swing around and get the ball. Just put the ball in his hands, and he's going to make a play. Of course, the Nasheem 4-star wide receiver kid tried to have a big day. Lakeland's secondary tried to keep him in the game. Hey, but, man, it's the Dreadnoughts, baby. We pulled one off. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the home team. Much love, man.
I didn't know if you had any other games you want to mention, but I want to mention one more real quick.
Yeah, I got some games for sure.
Central Florida against Tallahassee team. I guess this is technically Central Florida. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. And if I say this wrong as well, don't let everyone make fun of me. Denellen beats Florida High 21-14. A couple kids we've seen on the DR7 circuit over the years starring this season for the Tigers. Javian Frazier's, he's a team captain, receiver, defensive back. He was a star on Team Showtime. Should have a big senior campaign. The younger brother of Florida receiver Jaquavian Frazier's. So look out for Javian Frazier's. Then you got Dylan Donahoe as well, who we know. Hard-fought win for Denellen. I think they could potentially be in store for a solid season. I don't know a lot about Florida High just yet out of Tallahassee, but they lost a couple solid players. I'll be checking them out next week against Thomas County Central. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, really quick, man, before we let my boy Mark go on about the Texas guys, man. Florida took a hit, bro. We got to keep it real with y'all. Florida did take a hit. Down goes IMG, right, last week. Down goes Chaminade. Down goes St. Thomas Aquinas. Central lost, of course. That was an in-state game. But American Heritage lost to Milton, came down from Georgia. So, hey, we got to bounce back for sure. But we took a couple losses, man, this week. But it's all good, baby. It's all good.
We mentioned Texas is going to be kicking off week 1 coming up this Friday. I know Mark's going to be probably at a game Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the way he rolls. But we thought that it would be good for Mark to put himself out there and give some teams some bulletin board material. We're going to let him give his teams to watch in the DFW area. So go ahead, Mark.
Well, anybody that knows anything about the DFW areas, they're the reigning champions when it comes to Texas high school football right now, and it's the usual suspects at the top. If you kind of listen to, the chatter that's been going around here leading up to the season is, we're tired of seeing Duncanville, we're tired of seeing DeSoto. Is it going to be a Duncanville North Shore matchup again? Well, folks, yes, it is. It's because these guys don't regroup; they reload. They have 27 and 28 classes. That's a whole nother show that you want to get into. But we'll start with the DeSoto Eagles, the 6A D2 defending champs. The biggest thing is they're going to have to replace everything quarterback DJ Bailey. You guys know DJ very well from seeing him on the 707 circuits around the country. He's at San Francisco State now. But they replace him with Virginia Tech commit Keldon Ryan, and they still have Booby Feaster, the number 1 wide receiver in the country in the class of 2027. He's back for his sophomore campaign. And you have Dalen Singleton, the SMU commit as well. And listen, the running game is in good hands with Tiger Wright and the Texas A&M commit. And you have Big Byron Washington, a Syracuse commit up front leading the offensive line. Defensively, Kiki Abrams comes back. You have DJ Rump, who moved in from California, is one of the top 2027 edge rushers as well. You got Sal Reyes on the back end. The Soto's loaded. Coach Mathis and these guys really have, a program over there. Shout out to my guy Jeter, Dallas, Texas as well. He's a guy that's very close to the program over there. And he told me the other night that DeSoto looks to be back and ready to go. Now, I want to talk about another team that DeSoto's going to be facing week 2 in the North Crowley Eagles.
Ooh.
Coach Ray Gates has these guys ready to play. They have put up 49 and 50 points in 2 scrimmages in both games. They have a plethora of weapons. Coach Gates has North Crowley 26-2 in the last 2 years. You got to look at Chris Jimerson, the North Texas committed quarterback. And they have a guy in Daniel Bray. Everybody's been talking about him for the last 2 or 3 weeks. He was a stud out west. Shout out to my guy, Coach Andre Hendricks. You saw Daniel Bray with West Texas Elite. Well, now he's in the DF Dub, and he is wreaking havoc. And you also have John Turrentine III, 2026 left tackle, is probably the top tackle in the country. A Texas pledge, well, not pledge, but he's a guy that's very high on Texas's radar as well. And Jonathan Cunningham, who is a Texas committed linebacker. North Crowley's loaded. They play Lancaster week 1, but the week 2 matchup, and we will be in the building for that one, is North Crowley and DeSoto. And you can't mention DeSoto without mentioning Duncanville. The Panthers are coming off back-to-back state championships. They have a Hall of Fame coach in Coach Reginald Samples. Everybody knows the number 1 player in the class of 2025 in the country is DeCorian Moore, the Oregon commit. And listen, the highlights that I've seen of DeCorian, he's ready to go. Trust me. We're talking about a guy that can do it all. Listen, if you haven't watched Duncanville on special teams, guess who the punter is? DeCorian Moore. He's a guy that can do everything. And we're not even talking about his quarterback, who is the Elite 11 champion in Keelan Russell, Alabama commit, 5-star quarterback, probably the best quarterback in the country in the class of 2025. Now, the guy that I really want to put light on is Zachary Turner. He's a 2026 wide receiver that, when you speak of Duncanville, you always hear Keelan Russell, you always hear DeCorian Moore. Zachary Turner is that guy. Big physical guy that they kind of line up in the tight end, kind of flex him out of the wide receiver who can go and get it. He's got the speed to get deep, but I really like his physicalness at the point of attack when you talk about getting off the line of scrimmage. He just mashes DBs at the line of scrimmage, and he's a great blocker. Also on the offensive line, you got Amir Ross, who's one of the top linemen for Duncanville. Defensively, 2026 edge KJ Ford is a guy that you should know about, but there's a guys, that you will know about within the first 5 weeks, and his name is Landon Barnes. He's an edge rusher. He's the guy that I've seen a lot on the camp circuit. He's going to be that guy that's going to take that Colin Simmons trajectory here in this season. You got Polly as well, and there's another guy that you should be hearing about in the secondary for Duncanville. That's Braylon Edwards. He's a guy that can play safety. He can play corner as well. I do think that this will be a collision course. Remember the date, October 11th. I would love for you guys to fly in for this one. DeSoto, Duncanville. Circle that on your calendar.
Whoa.
That's the District of Doom District Championship matchup as well. But in the 5A ranks, you got to look at Alito. Until they're dethroned, 5A Division I is Alito's to lose. Denton Ryan is on their heels, though. They have one of the best teams in the Metroplex that you need to know about as well. 5A D2, you got to talk about the South Oak Cliff Golden Bears, led by Coach Jason Todd, and one of the best coaching staffs in the country. And I think that these guys are going to really turn some heads. I've been kind of watching South Oak Cliff from afar, but their offensive line, from what I've heard, is better than last year's. Wow. And they were in the state championship against Port Neches Groves last year. You got to look at Argyle as well as another team coming out of 5A Division II that's going to make some noise. And listen, I'll throw another team at you real quick. Colleyville Heritage. The Panthers have some guys over there that can get it done. They got a receiver, last name Blewett, is the guy that you need to know as well. And then I will end it with the 4A ranks, because I could go on and hours about the DFW. But I like Frisco Panther Creek. There's a guy in the 2026 class that's a national recruit in Jalen Lott. He's going to play some receiver. He's going to play some DB. He is as advertised. He's a guy that is on every recruiting radar that you can see. He's got close to 40 offers. Lott is just next level talent. He was a state champion on track and field this year for Frisco Panther Creek. Christian Trickett is another guy that made a mark for himself as a receiver last year that you're going to know about. And I like to talk about Donovan Webb. He's a guy that's been going up recruiting ranks as well. He's a safety. He's got great range, and he's a great tackler in the open field. But I think in the 4A D1, I really like Frisco Panther Creek coming out of DFW area.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I know you're going to have the coverage on deck throughout the season on the website, theplatformdr.com. I wanted to shout that out. A revamped, brand new website. It looks great. We have coverage coming at you throughout the week. I know you guys are always active throughout the week as well. We've got recruiting articles, game recaps, And, of course, we'll have the show coming at you. I know Drew has been very busy with his show, The Rundown. Kind of tell us about The Rundown. You had a big show, man, on the last show. You really set the bar high for yourself for what's to come this season with that one.
Hey, man, if you grow up where I came from, man, somebody come up to you about something, they be like, hey, bro, they give me the rundown on that. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of put that as a name, something I've been hearing, growing up. So I feel like that kind of encapsulates what I want to do. My goal for the rundown is to kind of make it a podcast type radio show type thing. That's why I kind of expanded on the guests last time. If you guys tuned in to the rundown, we had not one guest, but 3 guests from my last show. So, the mission for the rundown is, man, I want to provide, my listeners with guests ranging from players to coaches, just to kind of give you guys the rundown on what you need to know, whether that's latest recruiting news, latest news that's going on the high school scene or whatnot. So it's just a spotlight for, rising stars and those on the cusp of taking that next step on the recruiting trail. So far, I've had, 2 of the top quarterbacks or 3 of the top quarterbacks in the 2026 class in the country. But it also ranges from a guy like Ryan Daly, a D lineman that I had starting early on the show out of Venice High School, ended up committing to Duke University. So, it's just, like I said, it's just a way for guys to come on, give the rundown on what they got going on, whether it's latest recruiting. I like to spotlight guys that's getting it done in the classroom as well. So I want guests on every week. I want to do a weekly show, kind of tie it with this as well, especially putting a spotlight on my area, which is Polk County, Lakeland, Florida. I had a lot of kids on already. Those that need the exposure, need the help. It helps them, learn how to communicate, get that media experience early on, and it helps the college coaches get an insight. Like, they tapped in. You feel me? Like, I got people tapped into it, whether that's on Twitter or now the YouTube, and I like to give them the insight on the players. Like, how do they talk? How are they able to, express themselves on camera in that type of setting? Because it's going to come later on. So that's the goal of the rundown. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to the channel. The more you guys support, the more the thing can grow. So I really appreciate the ones that have subscribed and it's been liking and sharing the content on Twitter.
Mark, you've got your weekly show as well. Tell us about what you got going on with that.
Well, the On Your Mark show, man, is every week live on the Fishbowl Radio Network. We talk recruiting. We want to educate and elevate you about how to get recruited, the steps that you have to take to get recruited. It's really, for the parents and the players that just don't understand how to do it. Of course, we're going to have some of the best guests in the country when it comes to coaches, players, anybody that's influential in trying to help kids get exposure. That's one thing that we do. With the platform is we want to help expose the unexposed. And I know we keep reiterating that point, but I think it's really something that you have to take into consideration. The game of recruiting now is about exposure. It's about who gets the right eyes on you and who's seeing it. We talk about these things all the time when it comes to, for example, setting up a recruiting page, your Twitter page. If you got 50 followers and you're only following 20 people, then you're not active enough to get seen. And that's one nugget that goes into the recruiting, unless you're just a guy that wakes up with it out of the bed, like, with the athletic ability and the measurables that go into getting recruited. But, that's a mission and a passion for us. It's things that we do here at the platform. And the On Your Mark show is every week, Wednesday from 11 to 12 on the Central Time on the Fishbowl Radio Network. It's just about helping you get exposure any way we can, you know what I'm saying? And that's what it's all about. And it kind of ties into what, we do with the platform as well.
Right.
I got to plug me and Jonathan Mumphrey show here, our podcast that we've been doing. We started it out, the dedicated podcast here on the channel, on the DR Sports channel. You can check that out. But we'll have our first guest on this week, Charles Thompson. We know him with Hustle Inc. 7v7, but played in the game of the century with the Oklahoma Sooners against Nebraska in the late 80s. So we kind of talk about his journey, his rise, and getting into coaching as well. So that's a great discussion. You definitely want to check that out. That'll be on Wednesday. But before we wrap up our first episode here, and it's been a great show, guys. I'm looking forward to doing this with you all every Sunday. I want to talk about where we're going this week. It's week 1 for Mark. Drew's going to be watching Lakeland again. and I'll be heading up to South Georgia also. So, Drew, we'll start with you. Tell us about the Dreadnoughts a little bit. Who they got coming this week?
Like I said, man, I've been on Lakeland's trail to start the season, and I'm sorry, guys, I had to, right? Even though it's home team, but they've been playing some big games with Miami Central to kick the season off. That's a must-watch. But second week, man, they're going into week 2 against Lake Mary, and they're traveling again. So they'll be going up to the Central Florida area and meeting head-on with one of the top 2026 quarterbacks in the country, and Notre Dame commit Noah Grubbs. You know, I know Marc Henry's high on this kid. Ben, you are as well. We've been able to watch him compete throughout the 7v7 period. He trains with Balin Trujillo out in that Central Florida area, so he's constantly putting in the work. And he made a big-time commitment throughout the offseason to Notre Dame. So for him to be able to match up with the Lakeland Dreadnoughts, playing against some of these guys out here, man, it's a must-see. So I believe that's where I'll be this weekend, especially with Lake Mary going down to South Florida this week and taking on and beating Cardinal Gibbons. So they're on fire. They got a pretty good squad. It's not just Noah Grubbs. They got a receiving core. They got a tough offensive line. But I want to see how they do against them Dreadnoughts.
Mark, I believe you've got a DFW versus Houston matchup, right?
Yeah, it's a D-Town, H-Town matchup that's going down I-45, man. And listen, the fever pitch is at an all-time high. You got 2 state finalists in the 5A ranks and the 6A ranks going head-to-head, and that's North Shore, and you have South Oak Cliff that's traveling down to face North Shore in the hostile environment at Galena Park Stadium. North Shore took a tough loss to Duncanville in the state championship last year, but listen, they're loaded. You got Caleb Bailey, who's returning. He was a freshman. He won the state title and beat Duncanville. Now he's coming back for his senior season. And you also have the number 1 cornerback in the country, an Ohio State commit, Devin Sanchez. Shout out to Dab. Is one of those guys with Dab that we got a chance to see as an 8th grader on the DR7 circuit. Well, now he's a senior. He's coming back to try to lead North Shore back to the state prominence as they lost to Duncanville last year. But you also have DeAndre Hardiman in the backfield, Dion DeBlanc, and national recruit Quanell X, who is a Colorado commit at the wide receiver position. That's also going to be a difference maker in that game. Wow. But on the flip side, South Oak Cliff is coming in. They are feisty, and they are ready to go to get back to that state championship level, to get back to that. They won 2 and lost in the 3rd one to Port Neches Groves last year, but they kick off the season. They have one of the toughest schedules in the country. They face North Shore, they face Duncanville, and they make a trip to East Texas to take on Longview. Shout out to Haynes King from Georgia Tech for that big win yesterday. That's his stomping grounds as well. You know, man, you got to throw that in there. He's a Texas guy.
Mark. Come on,
Drew said, no, you did not have to throw that in there.
Come on, dog.
Got to throw that in there, man. You know what I'm saying? For the Lone Star State, shout out to Haynes King. But this is a matchup of what's going to happen in the trenches. Both of these teams are very physical. And if you know a Coach Todd team, that's their bread and butter. South Oak Cliff's going to lean on that running game. They got a returning quarterback in Carter Kopecki who's taking the reins as well. The defense is going to be stacked.
Yeah.
This is going to be a very, very good game. And then on Saturday, whenever I go to Houston, I always try to catch an HISD game to give the guys in the inner city some love. And I'm going to check out Washington High School versus Wisdom High School. Wisdom was the team that went 8-2 last year. Washington's kind of fallen on hard times. They were 10-0 in district champs about 2 years ago. But shout out to my guy, Coach Holloway. He's really trying to turn things around for Washington. And they have a 2025 running back that I really like. I just think that he needs to get more volume and more carries, and that's Mason Bean. He's a guy that's probably about 5'8", 5'9", about 185 pounds. If they can get Mason Bean rolling and get the offensive line to open those holes, I think Bean has a big game. He's a guy that I like to watch. I had a chance to see him last year, and he had a game over 100 yards. I just think you got to feed that beast. And if you get Bean the ball, it opens up the wide receiver game. They got a new quarterback that they're breaking in. So this is a big game for the Washington Eagles, but Wisdom's coming in with a little experience. So, shout out to HISD, which is the home of Lamar High School, Jack Yates High School, Madison High School. I always try to, when I get to the H, I always try to cover some HISD ball, and I'll check those guys out on Saturday night.
I think I'm gonna check out 2 games. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, really quick, man. Y'all gonna have to give me a break. And for those that's watching, man, give me a hangover break, dog. I done made a little mistake. Guys. So this week, not this next week. This week I'll be watching Bartow Gulf Coast. This week I'll be watching Bartow Go Coast. Bartow has lost 2 games in a row, bro. I love the coaching staff. I call the offensive coordinator and the head coach all the time. That's where I'll be. Next week will be the Lakeland Lake Mary game. That's my bad. That's for Florida State. I'm blaming you guys and Mike Norvell for getting me yesterday and reading the wrong dates.
Well, hey, the Seminoles got a little jet lag from that Ireland trip, so they got to be back.
Hey, Mike still might be in Ireland. You feel me? He might still be there.
Yeah. Hey, shout out to Georgia Tech for pulling off that upset, though.
And we'll talk about that later, brother. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, speaking of Georgia, I'll be going up to South Georgia on Friday. Check out Thomas County Central, 2-0, defending state champs. As we said, Florida High will be coming to town from Tallahassee. They're 0-1 coming off that loss to Denellen. Thomas County Central 15-0 last year. I saw them in week 1. You can check out those highlights here on the page, actually. A dismantling of Monroe, 54-7 in that game. And the Jackets were without 2 of their best players on defense in 2026 defensive lineman Cam Brooks and 2025 defensive back and recent USC commit Kendarius Reddick. They had 5 different players score rushing touchdowns in the game. I saw them in, and although they replaced all 5 starters on the offensive line, I think they're going to be in the mix for another state run this year. 2026 quarterback Jalen Johnson, I think he's ready to step up, make some big throws in some games to receivers like Jaden Dunbar. I'm interested to see what he does. I think Thomas County Central is more than just that ground game that we saw in week 1. So see if they open things up a little bit against the Seminoles. I've got Thomas County Central coming out on top, but I think it's going to be more of a test than what I saw them in 2 weeks ago. So very much looking forward to that. And then Thursday, I might actually make the trip down to Pensacola. I might go see Escambia and Niceville. How about that for you, Drew?
A
little panhandle action.
That's that North Florida area, man.
Yeah. Before we close out the show, and I know Mark has a busy day. He's got his media day. Can't wait to see what comes out with that. Mark. So shout out to On the Mark Show. But let's close things out with a little Jonah Williams talk. He committed to Texas, and that wasn't the only pickup for the Longhorns, I believe, in the last couple of days. So Texas kind of surging on the recruiting trail. Mark, in his many endeavors, that's one of the things he does. He writes about Texas recruiting. So what can you tell us about Jonah Williams and the Longhorns in this recruiting cycle?
First of all, congratulations to Jonah, man, and his family. We had a chance to see Jonah when he was an 8th grader on the DR7 circuit playing for DAB. Shout out to Coach B, Coach Brandon, and those guys over there. Jonah's he's a freakish athlete. And he's not just a great football player. He excels in basketball, but he has a chance to be a first-round pick in the baseball draft in 2025. He's also going to play baseball at Texas as well. But we're talking about a guy that can do it all. He can play on offense. He can play on defense. We saw him firsthand dismantle defenses as a wide receiver on the 7-on-7 circuit at a DR7 event multiple times. He is that guy. He's one of the best players in the country in 2025. And Texas lands a big fish to bring him to the 40 acres. Also, shout out to Nick Brooks from the Georgia area, Grayson High School. He was the 6'7", 345-pound tackle that we also picked up. Another big human for Coach Kyle Floyd in the Texas program. But I think that Jonah comes in and he's a guy that can make an immediate impact once he gets his bearings and learns the system and get his feet wet. He's going to be a guy that's going to make him pay immediate dividends on the back end for the Texas Longhorns in the secondary. I was super excited for him. Shout out to the platform. That clip that you put out this week put me right back in there. You can see I'm kind of hovering in the back. I mean, these guys were phenomenal. Devin Sanchez was on that team. Dylan as well. He's now at TSU down at Texas
Dylan Thomas, yeah.
Yeah, Dylan Thomas. Guys, DAB had a very, very good team, and they featured these guys that are going on to play collegiate football on Saturdays. And we saw these guys early. That's the thing about early identification when it comes to recruiting now. And the advantage that we have with the platform is we get to see these guys as 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And we can see it. And then now the country is seeing it now on a national stage. And the platform is that national go-to source for that, like Drew said. And that's what we want to be here for, you guys. We want you to be able to pick up, click the platform, go to the platform.dr.com, and you'll see the latest and greatest in recruiting, coaching, spotlights and things like that. So, I was super excited to see Jonah come. I think the last visit that he had down to Texas was the big kicker. And then, Texas picking up Jim Schlossnagle from Texas A&M, I think had a big to do with that because he had Texas A&M right in the national championship last season. Now you expect those big expectations to come to the 40 acres now down in Austin. So I think that Jonah's a guy that's going to fit in perfectly. And the thing I like about Jonah is he's one of those guys that you can go and talk to easily. We've all had a chance to interview him in the past, and he's that guy that he has that star potential, that star about him, but he's very humble, and he's one of those guys that's athletically, he's a freak on the field.
Absolutely. Before we close things out on our first episode, Drew, anything you want to leave us with before we go?
Yeah, man. Just make sure you guys are checking out our rankings, dog. We put out our 2026 rankings, but that was on the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and the DBs. We'll be continuing to update those each month, especially with seeing these high school games. There's going to be some shaking up here coming soon. So make sure you guys are tapped into the Platform DR or the platform.com. Is that what we're doing for the URL, right? That's what we want them clicking.
The platformdr.com.
The platformdr.com. Make sure you guys are tapped in on all our social media accounts too. We're trying to get the Instagram going up. The Twitter's doing fine, but we appreciate all the guys that's been supporting for sure.
Absolutely. Mark, anything you want to say before we close out?
The guys, we've been updating those watch lists, week to week. The only way you get seen is if we can get in front of you. If you look at the criteria that we go by, it's film evaluation. We're seeing you in person. What your upside is. Statistics go into it just a little bit. But like Drew said, this is not a finished product. This is just to get your eyes on the watch list. It's going to change month to month. It's going to change as far as how you guys progress and what you do on the field. Now you got to, put it in front of us. We're on our field every week from Thursday through Saturday around the country, so it's a big thing. We've been getting great feedback, from everybody around the country that's been loving this. So, to expose that's unexposed, we have to see you, and we, tag us, drop the DMs. That's the biggest thing. People always ask me, well, how do I get a write-up? Or a kid will message us, can I get a write-up? How do I get a write-up? Well, you have to expose yourself to us in order to get a write-up. We can't just write something or put something out and we don't know you or haven't seen you. So, get yourself in front of us, tag us, drop us in the DMs. You can drop it in the DMs on Instagram if that's the way you're communicating. But the best way to get eyes on you and get exposed is to, get with the platform, and we're going to get you right.
Absolutely. Well, guys, there's no way I could top what both of you just said. So I'm just going to go ahead and close it out. For Drew Johnson and Marc Henry, I'm Ben Spicer. Thanks for joining us on the Platform Under the Lights podcast, episode 1. We'll see you back next Sunday for episode 2 right here on the DR Sports YouTube page. Hit that like and subscribe button on the way out. We appreciate you guys.
Peace.
Peace.